do have a quorum. The meeting is called to order. If you wouldn't mind, let's all rise and pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In your packet and in the packet in front of you that emailed the other day, you should have the minutes from the previous meeting. Had an opportunity to read through those meetings, those minutes. If there's any corrections, please let's do so now. If not, we can entertain a motion to accept the minutes. Mr. Thurman, Mr. Robert Thurman makes the first motion to accept the minutes. Ms. Bay makes second motion. All in favor? All opposed? Minutes are approved. The treasurer's report you will see in front of you reflects that we had a beginning balance of $114,355.45. We received a reimbursement from Tennessee Central in the amount of $51,7605. This was reimbursement grant money that was approved by the Tennessee Central Board of Directors last month, which reimburses the Industrial Development Board of Trousdale County for expenses incurred in the sale of the property purchased by Steve Anderson Meats. That gives us an ending balance of $119,531.50. Really, the main thing that we have on our agenda tonight that we need to try to determine, and because I think it's a little bit in limbo now that retail strategies has come to fruition, is on our radar, is about a year ago, we decided to explore the possibilities of granting some funds to businesses or industrial businesses in our community to aid them. And Ms. Bay developed an application process, and this was sort of tentatively put in place at the end of last summer, if my memory serves me. But with the obligations that we have with retail strategies that we are excited to see come to fruition and is engaged, we need to be cognizant of our limited and finite funds. The IDB does not get a regular or reoccurring funding mechanism. So the money we have is, for all intents and purposes, the money we have. And I think we need to finalize and narrow the scope on what we're going to do about these grant possibilities. Now, we do not have any grant applications that have been submitted. One person did attend a meeting last summer and took an application, but that application has not been submitted. And I think it's important that we decide for sure what we're going to do about this before that application is submitted, because I don't want to leave somebody in limbo. So I'm going to open the floor for discussion, and maybe we can work through this. Does anybody have any thoughts? Mr. Graves.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on this, to be honest with you. I don't know how the rest of the group feels, but Carson Jones with Iris Fuel Tech is the application outstanding that we think may be coming eventually. The fact that we've asked him to fill it out, and now if he goes through that process and spends the time to do that, and then we basically tell him that we have decided to go a different direction with our funding methods, I feel a little bit bad about that. Thoughts? Anybody else?
Do we think it's going to be forthcoming after all this time?
I have been approached. last month, I was approached
Okay.
by a lady saying she was operations manager. Don't quote me on the title, but ad was, someone reached out to me for a copy of the application that was representing Carson's organization. I later was informed that that might be his wife that works with him, so there is a possibility of that. And I do not have an emotional attachment to the application as the author, but I do have a personal, heartfelt that Carson took the application. I'm concerned about that, and the fact that his representative reached out just last month and couldn't do anything aggressively. That does not have a date or a timeline on it. If we're going to do something, I think we ought to. I think we need to put a date on it. There's so many days for the application. And I think we need
Time.
at that time. Exactly. I think we need a time. I think we need a number on it. And Seth, I know you were on the retail strategies yesterday, and I know that they gave us some other options on how to invest the funds that we do have in our budget. So I think a bunch of us were on that. I think that gives us an option of reality that the grants are not the only focus for our funding.
I don't want to interrupt the flow of exchange here, but I do want to clarify for the record that we are not committing to granting this outstanding application. We have not seen it. It has not been evaluated, weighed, or measured. And that's all going to depend on us seeing it before we decide whether or not, or whatever that grant application or that amount might be, would have to be further scrutinized. But let's just say for the record that we have not committed to anything on that. But I follow what you're saying. You're suggesting that we need to draw a line in the sand that if we don't have an application by this date, so let's say hypothetically, we set that date, last day of this month, whatever you feel is appropriate. At that point, do we suspend temporarily or indefinitely? Do we shut it down? She went to a lot of work to make the process. I kind of disagree with, just throwing it in the trash can, but what are your thoughts?
When we decided to do this, and I voted for it, knowing the amount of funds we actually possess and the amount of money it costs in startups of any business, I knew at that point that what we would be able to do would be pretty limited.
Token amount.
Because we can't just, whatever money we have in the bank, we can't just give it all to one person. That's my feeling. Everybody else may not feel that. But it's not that I don't think we should help people, and that was, I think, a really good outreach that we put out there. But
Do we have wording in the application process that states like it's pending us having availability of funds to give out?
It's basically a data collector.
Okay.
It's not an information giver. So, which may be something that we really need to reconsider because we abruptly just sent it to them without the true strong logistics of what we would be offering, expecting, and other than the data collector. So, I totally agree with the conversation that's going on, and I'm not thinking that we necessarily throw it in the trash. I'm very comfortable with it just being placed upon the sidelines for other individuals. And I don't know if we can do that. Maybe we just say maybe 30 days. Give them 30 days to turn in the application as is, and then that way. Do we know if Dan is called in?
I don't know. watch. We're not on the Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I will state, we have committed to a 3-year contract, which is $105,000. Our current balance is 119,531 will only leave 14,931.50 in the bank at the end of that contract. So just put that out there that we don't have a lot to play with because we have earmarked, and especially not knowing that we have any more funds coming for sure.
And yeah, like you said, is there, do we know how the pilot program, but the other funds out there will play into this as well?
Well, the way it's been explained to me, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, and I told Mr. Benson that there was no need for him to attend tonight because I didn't think it was worth his drive from Lebanon for this. But that's a money in, money out thing. The Younger and Associates that's in Jackson is wholly paid for by a TVA. And it's a direct payment. It's not a reimbursement, so we don't have to cut any checks. And to my knowledge, that will be the case going forward. That is an avenue provided to us through Tennessee Central by TVA. Mr. Rochelle works specifically and totally off of commission per deal. So the work that he's doing now to help us go through this policies and procedures with a fine-tooth comb is all on the contention that he's going to do a deal or deals with us in the future. So he's fronting goodwill towards that. So to answer your question more specifically, we don't have to reserve any funds to cover that. Now, if a company comes in and wants to make a pilot request, they have to pay a premium or an application fee that is supposed to cover some of those upfront or administrative fees. So that was a long answer, but hopefully that answered.
Well, we all unanimously vote for the retail strategies investment. So obviously we're committed to that, and having 14,000 change left at the end of the day is not going to give us a lot of latitude. But as Heather stated, the application was an information gathering tool. We didn't commit to anything. And as far as I know, Iris has not shipped any product yet to a customer that I'm aware of, unless you guys know something more than I do.
He did do a job posting this week. He's searching for help. So I think he's about ready. I don't know if that's in 30 days or next Monday. I don't know, but there was a job posting that the mayor posted this week on the county website.
Well, do we really have to make a decision to suspend it or not suspend it, since we're not committed to anything at this point other than taking an application that gives us information for which to make a decision on? Or?
No, I don't think we're boxed in or in any parameter to do so. I think the polite thing to do would be make a decision before an application is in, because if he puts an application in and then we say we're going to suspend it, that's a little rude. It may not be breaking any rules, but it may not be the most polite thing to do. So I think at this point we should decide, since we have no applications lying in front of us formally at this point, we have no idea how far along they are in that process. I'd hate for them to go 100% through the process and then say, well, we don't have enough.
And I think it's a little beyond being polite. I think it's just the fact that we don't necessarily have the money to do anything. Not that we're trying to be rude or anything else. It's just there's no funds there.
I will say that we've made our formal request for the county to fund us $10,000. That has not been 100% approved yet because that portion of the budget has not gone through commission. It will probably next month. So that nothing's written in stone until that's been voted on. But that being said, that $10,000 will be specifically earmarked for retail strategies and cannot be spent on anything else. So we will only have the 14,000 and some odd dollars.
Well, yeah, but the 10,000 they're committed to, if that finalizes, then we'll have that money, because we won't be taking out of our own budget, even though we got to spend that 10,000 they're giving us for retail strategies. That means that we will have a bigger $10,000 greater balance out of our own funds.
Yeah, we could then, because I don't think we did not vote to specifically say that $105,000 of our budget is committed to retail strategies, but we've made a contractual obligation. So yes, you're correct. I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, we might decide to try to go into a fourth year. So accumulating some funds along the way might give us that option later, but it's completely up to you guys and what you think.
Well, how about this? How about we officially suspend taking applications? And we deal with Irish Fuel Tech if we get it
Say within a particular time period.
within 30 days. How does that
I'll
sound?
second that.
Is that a
That
motion?
is a motion.
So your motion is to suspend the grant process.
Suspend taking any more applications
Okay.
as of now. And the only application we might have outstanding for the 30-day cap on it
So by the next meeting,
by the next meeting.
okay?
So that's my motion.
Leah,
That's
did you-
what you guys agree to.
I have officially suspended taking applications as of today for 30-day cap on
Do you want outstanding application for Irish Plastics?
on any outstanding applications.
For Irish Plastics.
And we need to confirm with Dan and Charlie that they've not forwarded that to anyone else. I don't believe them, they haven't, not addressed that with us, but I'd like to check that box just to be sure.
We'll find out about that. If there's an issue, then I'll bring it to your attention by email. And we'll either address it at the next meeting or beforehand if we have to, but
Well, if it stays within open applications, that cover, if the motion stays within open applications. that
well, we
covers.
may add an exception to the motion for whatever outstanding application that Tennessee Central may have given out, but to my knowledge, they have not. So we can add that modifier in via email vote if we need to. I believe that would be acceptable for whatever outstanding application. So we have a motion, and Mr. Thurman, I believe, seconded, or Ms. Bay second. So is there any other questions or further discussions? All right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And so passes.
If it is returned, we'll have our data next time. I know we rushed to be kind on that.
And that's probably going to be a living document anyway that we'll modify as we learn, because we're still, this is a new process for all of us. May I ask a favor of you, Ms. Bay, that you reach out to them since you had contact and inform them on the cap? So we don't blindside them by saying, guess what, it's too late. I don't think that would be a right thing to do. So if they're going to submit it, they need to submit it for the next meeting. And that next meeting will be on the 4th Tuesday, which will be the 22nd. So if we do not have that application submitted by 7 p.m. on June 22nd, it will no longer be available to be considered. I think giving them fair notice is wise.
I agree.
I in no way feel like we should diminish anybody's deserving nature of such help or grant. It's just we have finite funds and we have to be careful since we've committed to so much. Next on the agenda, we want to discuss the retail strategies activities. We had a Zoom meeting yesterday. Heather was present and Seth, and if you guys want to discuss or have topics or questions about that, then I think the main focus of that was the document they sent us about a month ago, which was basically their action plan for the historic downtown area. It was a compilation of their data and basically their sales brochure going forward and their action plan on things that the county can do to facilitate growth and development in this area that will aid them in their endeavors as well. Several topics came up. One was they seemed to be fairly focused on the idea of a vacant storefront tax. That was discussed. as well as avenues of incentives that would offset the penalty of a storefront tax. Discussion, which I enjoyed, not only presented the possibility for a penalty of some value for a vacant storefront that is not being actively attempted to lease or sell. And there was even the discussion that they can't put a price on it that is so out of market value that nobody would ever buy it or rent it. We even made the suggestion that maybe, and I'm just throwing a figure out, that if it's 50% higher than the market value, then they really don't want to sell it or rent it. Something of that nature, but whatever that may, however that may be, and that would be a long protracted thing for the mayor to put in progress and for it to work its way through committees and commission, even if it would get approved, but also the options of doing incentives so we don't penalize somebody for having a vacant storefront, but we also offer them many avenues of incentivization so they will have a reason to do something. Thoughts? So,
No, you covered basically what was talked about, and I hate to say this, I was in and out of the call. But the one thing about I like the idea of the vacant storefront tax. I just wondered what pushback would get from all of that. That was the big question for me. But I think the idea that we're working toward, and this board is supporting this retail strategy thing, the idea is to have businesses open and businesses running downtown. In order to do that, I think we need to put some teeth to it. I think it'd be something we need to support, look at support. I don't know how easy that would be.
I don't think it's gonna be easy, but I think what some of the recommendations were about the leniency with the front door and front window beautification kind of thing.
Yeah.
They did say that we would, it's not just okay, tomorrow you're empty, so tomorrow you have to pay this tax. That's not what they were saying. They were saying that they were going to compare other municipalities and cities and how they do in their area and implement this tax. And then from there, we would be able to make our own determination of which timeline is most appropriate for this community. Then also what fee is most acceptable for this community in a reasonable manner. There will be some resistance within the community, but I think there were some recommendations on how to present it so that it comes with a softer tone and not just so harsh as your commercial building's empty, we're not collecting sales tax, we're going to tax you for that loss. They were quite energetic and giving of information and resources on how for us to articulate that in the most positive time possible. But that's going to be a tough one, and it's going to be really, really tough to sell. But I think, like Sam said, I think it's critical that we get businesses in these areas that are vacant. And we're hearing that from commissioners too.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I said, we're hearing that from commissioners too. So that's not just us speaking, commissioners and constituents of the community are still telling us.
Well, it's almost like we're stuck right now between the building owners and then doing anything where the rent's so high, you can't get a viable business into it, or to at least get started with anything. And I mean, I think there's going to have to be a little nudge somewhere.
Sophia, did you have a question? You look like you had a question.
I don't have a question. My mind is just going, I think about codes and zoning and things like that go hand in hand with this retail strategy and how we work together to be able to get the business or the actual property owners to make their property worthy of a business before we actually penalize or incentivize people to put a business in it.
Natalie said something to that tone. I don't remember exactly what she said, but she, with the chamber, she spoke that these owners need to come in and they need to make these places. And I spoke a little, I think, I'm not sure how it was perceived, but a little, I didn't mean to be as harsh as I may have sounded, but we can't force anybody to go in and do what we want with their investment. And it's gonna take us, us as humans, I'm not saying as board, I'm just saying as citizens in the community, go in and buy and make it what we want, if we want it to be something. But on the flip side, I don't know if my heart has ached so much when I did that walkthrough. And I thought of the two of you living here for so long, and just right down the street, and having grown and seen this area where it's so lively and everything, and now this building over here, right there, right somewhere right here, yes, it's just literally the back wall's crumbling. And someone spoke up in the meeting and made a statement that, well, maybe they'll sell it. Maybe this, with this incentive, this pilot program, if they're not going to do it themselves, maybe it will sell it. And I did say I kind of understand that. I mean, I understand what that is. I think that they are offering as well. Spoke on codes. So they gave some options of formulas that they had worked with historical downtown community groups and gave owners so that they might have an appeasing color palette, some things to do. Something that's not so a set of guidelines and no, it wasn't guidelines, it was recommendations, wasn't it? It was a recommendation, not a guideline.
To keep things consistent.
Yeah, to just keep the community and the downtown flow just very consistent. Aesthetically. So they say the figure was tough as we want to, but that's not what they recommend. They recommend that we just here's a palette, you have a clue what to look at, and then own it. They're offering the moon stars if we want it. And there was a conversation, someone asked, does that mean that it's more money? And they said that part of where the codes and this, that was part, did I remember correctly that that's part of it? That was part of their, yeah, it was already part of our pre-existing package because their focus is downtown the first year. And I think that was a shocker to a couple of us. I spoke up on that. But their focus for the very first year is not the whole entire county. It's just the downtown area, and they're focusing on it because it's trying the most, I think. Bring my notes, so that's all I can think of.
There was also discussion about Natalie had mentioned that John Oliver had applied, I believe, for a grant from the Arts Commission, and it looked like that was going to potentially work out, and they were going to provide him with a list of artists, maybe, that would potentially do a mural on the side of Mr. Hires' property over here, and I think I have heard, unless I'm wrong, that he had consented to allow a mural to be put over there. I think that, you think it's not that big a deal, but when you start enhancing your surroundings, you get a better attitude about things, and you think there's change. The other thing that they discussed, and I'm all for the mural idea. I think that's a fabulous idea, but also, especially at that intersection, you have so much visibility. But also that was discussed was that I personally liked discussing was the wayfinding signs, newer, colorful, easier to read wayfinding signs that point you towards, historic sites. We discussed the chamber's development. And in case, well, we were at the steering committee, I believe that she announced it, or economic development, I can't remember. But the chamber got a grant and they developed a new historic tour here in the county that had been done back in the 80s, I think. They did a very, very beautiful, very professional brochure, has GPS coordinates, scan codes, an iPodcast or a podcast that Jack McCall narrated, a very slick, very professional tourism draw. And she had so many printed up, 2,500 or something. She had called the rest stops or the whoever manages the rest stops in Tennessee, and they said they would distribute those, but you had to have 500 in a batch. So Mr. Jewell suggested looking into some ways to fund printing up 10,000 more so that we could distribute them amongst all the rest stops in the greater Nashville area or Tennessee as far as we can stretch. And I thought that was a very good thing. One of the breakout sessions I sat through at the governor's conference 2 years ago, summer before last, was about tourism. And the gentleman who comes from the Purity Dairies family said that he didn't realize how important tourism was when he took that position. People come to your county, drop their money and leave, and you don't have to provide services. And he said, so it's the biggest bang for your buck of anything you can do. So he fully advocated tourism. So she spoke of that. So the Wayfinder signs, the mural, the tourism aspect, and the storefront vacancies, that's, to the best of my recollection, the main topics that we talked about. One thing that I did ask is, when would they start pursuing businesses to come here? And they indicated that that was more of what happens in year 2, which would be December or January. And I expressed my concern over that timeline because we have a really wonderful piece of property that is potentially available, and I'm afraid that it's going to get all scarfed up if we miss our window of time. So I think they're going to schedule a call with Lacey and I, and maybe the mayor, to discuss accelerating that timeline. I would like to see some activity this summer because that particular piece of property was not available this time last year, so I don't want to mess around and see it get away. Is there any other?
I was shocked that Elliot had not already contacted the owners downtown. That was one thing. He kind of asked for permission. I don't know if it's permission, but we wanted to be the ones to call upon the property owners that are in the downtown blocks, or if we wanted them to. And I thought that they were already going to acquire those relationships, but I guess they just acquired that data.
It was my understanding as well with you when we did our walkabout that was going to be, now maybe it's just premature and they haven't had time to get that, because I think they were wanting us to approve that document. I think that was the first step, the action plan. So maybe we're a little premature on that, but I agree with you. I did send an email to the mayor suggesting the possibility for his consideration on the mayor and I, or any member of this board, maybe Mr. Jewell, a couple of people in the community go and physically try to have a face-to-face with as many of these property owners as possible and just sit down and say, look, this is what we're trying to do. We're excited about the future. We're hoping you'll get behind us on this, and would you consider allowing us to market your property for lease or sale, and tell them about these incentive programs that we're talking about and maybe giving them some assistance. The mayor's been busy, and that's just the other day, so he hasn't had a chance to respond, but it occurred to me during that meeting that might be a good idea to just go out and put the personal touch. And then, I think it means something when the mayor shows up and asks you to talk about that sort of stuff. So I don't know, that's a possibility. It may pave the way for Elliot and Retail Strategies to make a call on after that. I don't know. But I think rather than sending an email or calling on the phone, it's that personalization of going out, shaking their hand and saying, you know, how can we help you do something with your property? How can we help? So
Mayor
those are,
did say that the Wayfair signs, there were some of them, is that what they were saying during the sidewalk project? If the sidewalk. The sidewalk project, if there were the Wayfair signs on there, or where the medians were taken out of the paving plan for downtown.
I don't know.
There's 2 or 3 projects going on, so I can't remember.
I think the wayfinder signs are a relative, and the mural is relatively cheap things to do to start the ball rolling.
And to be implemented right here,
Yes,
not throughout the entire county, just for their focus is solely, truly right here, right now.
yeah, I think they
These
kind of
owners
centered everything around this
Wayfair.
courthouse and outward.
With the walkability formula being created for this space and this, however big this is.
I hope you all had an opportunity to read through the data in that package because it's impressive. It's enlightening what you learned in that data. So I'm very, very impressed with their presentation and their package. I've had no personal reservations other than I'd kind of like to see the timeline on the retail end of it ramp up a little bit. But other than that, I've been very pleased personally. Update on the pilot program. There's not much to really update you. Nothing's really happened. Since our last meeting, the mayor and Mr. Jewell are up to their eyeballs in the budget, so they don't have time to think about much else right now. But I'm hoping that when they get clear of that monster, that then they can focus towards potentially setting up a panel of citizens to help us with the suggestions that Mr. Rochelle is making in the policies and procedures, because he wants us to have some public buy-in on that. So we need to put together a panel of people that could sit down with us and go through it and give us their opinions on those changes. Also, there has been discussion of setting up a subcommittee under Budget Finance Committee that would be the people that would be most in the loop on any potential pilot programs that would come down the pike for us. So once we accept an application and then that application is forwarded to Younger Associates and we get an evaluation matrix, I guess at that point we would negotiate a deal with the applying company, and when we have a tentative deal, it would have to go through the subcommittee of budget finance for final approval. It would not have to take the time to go through the full commission because this will be a very time sensitive thing. Now, if I understand the process correctly, the policies and procedures will have to, once we finalize that, if we have a final document, we'll go through budget finance. It will then, if it gets recommended through budget finance, go through the full commission. And that will give us the opportunity to operate within those boundaries to make a deal. But the final deal would be approved by the tentative subcommittee or the prospective subcommittee, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Is there any other business that anyone would like to discuss? Any other projects or anything that anyone would like to talk about? There being none, public comments. Ms. Jewel, Ms. Debbie, do you have anything? Challenging, I think, yes. Well, let me ask you, what's your opinion on this?
Really got to do your research, how to get granted, granted ballot, research on that. Because you would hate to be sued as a party, and possibly have historic rights. I think Brandon probably needs to research
To be quite honest, we
that.
wouldn't have it.
I know it's early. They got it already in there.
Sure. Well, and it really wouldn't have much to do with us. It really nothing to do with the industrial board. That would be an action that the county would have to take. So it's going to have to be something that the mayor will have to develop, and he works closely with Mr. Bello. And it would take some time to even put something like that in play, even if it was decided that that's a good idea. I would say it'd be hard to get something like that done in less than 6 months at best. But I didn't get the feeling that the mayor was completely sold on the idea just yet, so I think he's pondering and researching himself. The concept seemed like a good idea just on its face, but agreed, it's problematic. And nobody's here to hurt anybody.
Is that something that, so if retail strategies suggested and we did follow up on that, is that something that the Industrial Development Board puts together as a ordinance or a resolution to present to the county commission, or how does that work?
I guess it is possible.
And you're funding money into that.
And didn't there was a back to these committees, there's all these committees, I'm not sure if they are not a part of the county. You know, there's 501c3s, but 501, multiple ones that do get the perception they are part of to the unconscious. Those that are not known. But in the chambers not. And so there was for the downtown. They made recommendations to the county, and the county invested in those. So as an advice, I'll take it as self-title of an advisory committee who has just hired the services of someone who, many retail strategies, who is finding the legal way to implement this. So they're a consultant for this. They're consulting with us and they're letting us know what's legal out there to be implemented, and it's already implemented in other cities. So they've done Birmingham, they've done Lebanon, they've done Franklin, Nolensville. So they're already practicing the introduction to this, because what I have heard in some of the meetings is a lot of times our city or county commissioners don't, or county people don't want to go out there and find this information out, because there's some constituents that might get irritated and upset. So they put that deed upon someone like us, which we have been requested for that to be put on us, so that we can bring it back to the county. And if they want to use it, they vote on it and they make it happen. If they don't want to use it, then they vote against it and it doesn't happen. But it does give us extra data and extra information so that we can implement opportunities for this community to have developers, franchises that would even be eligible for this community. So
The downtown look like Nolensville now. Hello.
Yeah. It's, if we can, our sole intent here, and I believe I can speak for everybody in this room, is we don't want to blow it up into a commercial zone like Franklin or Gatlinburg, but we want to retain its charm, but also add some prosperity back to the county. So that's the thing. Now, Robert's probably the most experienced on the commission here, so you might can answer this better, but I don't necessarily, now I think we could sponsor a resolution or an ordinance to do that, but legally, I think really it probably ought to come from the mayor for it to be successful. Especially when it comes to a tax, that's and that might even have to go to a referendum. So it's very complex.
Forever.
Yeah. Take a long time. If it goes to referendum, it take a couple of years.
And these are the things that lots of small towns in this country live in. Every little town you go through says this is the historic town hall. for all this. It seems.
Well, there's been two classic and profound nails in the coffins for small town America, and that's interstates and NAFTA. Those two things right there pretty much account for most small towns losing their prosperity all throughout America. I can tell you from experience, when I had a car wash company, that our car washes that were in towns that were near an interstate were always more prosperous. Had a car wash in McMinnville that did not connect to an interstate, was nowhere near as prosperous as Manchester. It was right next to 24. So.
When I attended the governor's conference with Brian, I was at a separate breakout session. One of the keynote speakers was my favorite high school economics teacher, and he became the mayor after I graduated and went on. And we were talking about everything we're trying to do right now. And he said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "After Carrier is the big company that left the town, that bankrupted, everybody lost their jobs, businesses closed. And although they are bigger, much bigger than Hartsville, they have the same exact problem we have right now in the downtown area." And he said it was very difficult and took him 8 years to really get rolling. So it's going to be a process.
Well, I guess the thing that could, my sense of urgency about this is we are in a period of prosperity in this country right now that we haven't seen in many years. We're in between recessions. And even in spite of COVID, our county financially is doing very, very well. And I'd like to take advantage of that because it's really hard to make this happen when you're in a downturn. So if we don't take advantage while the sun's shining, it's going to be really hard when it's raining.
They have much more on their plate than we do here. We're much, much smaller than McMinnville. So maybe it won't be so difficult, but it is going to be time consuming.
They have their own superhero.
We have to get by something. We have to get by. And I keep thinking maybe if we just got someone that would take that leap of faith, that could be successful, then that would be a magnet for other things. That's the hope, my hope. I don't think we're gonna be gangbusters in a short time.
This whole retail strategy is the whole purposes of this tax. It's about bringing in life to the buildings that someone's all tired.
Well, I'd love it if they just got energized by what was going on and nobody had to ask them to do anything with their places. But that's maybe not realistic, but I agree. I think if one, activity begets activity. If one happens,
To bring people.
it's gonna make a slow, it's a crack in the levee. I think we're all on the same page, and I think we're all very hopeful for the future. And I think we're doing what we can do. That's all you can do. Just try our best for the greater good of the community. So if there's no other comments or discussions or anything anybody'd like to talk about, I will entertain the motion to adjourn. Scott Graves, make a motion to adjourn. Do I get a second? Seth. All adjourned.
I'm turning off the lights.